So even before conception, we were very clear we were having a girl. And I knew that I needed a girl first to kind of ease me into it, because I have a pretty good idea of what kind of father I would be. So I needed a girl to kind of, slow me down and warm, and soften me up, if you will. So for me, raising my daughter, I came into fatherhood already with a certain maturity and certain understanding of male-female dynamics. And with a girl, all of that starts with the father. So I've always, since I literally pulled her out of my wife.
The world damn near froze the second the news broke. Malcolm Jamal Warner, not just an actor, but a whole cultural icon, a poet, a man who moved different, was gone. Just like that. A drowning off the coast of Costa Rica on July 20th, 2025. And suddenly, one of the most respected voices in Black Hollywood was gone forever. Fans everywhere, shattered. Whether you knew him as Theo Huxtable or followed his powerful poetry and activism, the loss hit like a sucker punch to the chest. Social media didn't just react, it exploded. Celebs cried publicly, old clips resurfaced, and fans shared stories like digital candles lit in his name. They remembered how he evolved from a sitcom kid to a serious, fearless artist who never sold out. Everybody had something to say about Malcolm. Everybody except her, his wife, the woman nobody knew. The woman he kept away from the cameras, the award shows, the interviews, no red carpets, no couple posts, not even a name. Malcolm protected her like treasure. They raised a kid in total privacy, built a love that existed in silence, away from the spotlight. And when he died, she stayed quiet. No Instagram tribute, no press release, not a word, until now. For the first time since Malcolm's death, she finally broke the silence. Not for clout, not to land a book deal, but because, in her own words, the silence started to hurt more than the truth. And what she revealed? It wasn't just about that tragic day on the beach. It went way deeper. It was unfiltered. It was heavy. It was everything she'd been holding in for way too long. Her voice cracked as she laid it all bare. The life they built together, the weight Malcolm carried behind closed doors, the fears he never named, and the secrets he never dared to tell the world. You could hear the pain in every pause. She'd go quiet, lost in a fog of memory, like she was trying to climb out of a storm that never fully passed. But when she did speak, what came out wasn't just grief. It was a deep, aching love story and a raw look at the real Malcolm Jamal Warner. Not the one we thought we knew, the one only she ever saw. This is her truth, their story. And now, for the first time, we're catching a glimpse of a side of Malcolm that never made it to TV or magazines. This wasn't some scripted Hollywood love story. Their first meeting had no flash, no chaos, no paparazzi. Just a quiet little bookstore in Silver Lake, LA, squeezed between a sleepy coffee spot and a dusty old record store. Malcolm was tucked in the poetry section, flipping through a worn-out Langston Hughes. She was scanning the shelves for some Audre Lorde. That's when it happened. Their eyes met over a stack of books. She knew exactly who he was. Of course she did. He was everybody's older brother, the guy who made awkward teenage years feel cool just by showing up on screen. But that day, he wasn't that Malcolm. He wore a faded hoodie, glasses a little lopsided, gripping that paperback like it held his soul. He looked peaceful, invisible almost. He didn't even notice her until she dropped her book. It slammed to the floor like fate shouting, "Wake up!" "Langston or Lord?" he asked, eyebrow raised, the kind of sly grin that could stop time pulling at his lips. She let out a soft laugh, caught completely off guard by his question. "I didn't say that," she told him, with a grin she couldn't hide. And just like that, the spark was lit. It wasn't loud or obvious. It didn't come with fireworks. It was quiet, almost like a whisper drifting through the back of your mind. But that tiny moment planted something. A vibe, a pull, a connection they didn't even fully understand yet. After that day, the so-called random meetups, they weren't random anymore. First came coffee runs, then long, lazy strolls around Echo Park Lake. Malcolm moved slow, not in words, but in energy. He spoke with purpose, like every sentence had weight. And behind that calm exterior, there was something heavy he kept tucked deep inside. She saw it early. He wasn't about the glitz or the red carpet noise. Forget Emmys. He'd rather talk Coltrane, Nina Simone, James Baldwin, chakras, pain, healing, things that fed the soul, not the ego. And when she opened up, he didn't just nod and pretend to care. No, he locked in, eyes locked, mind focused, like her words were scripture. That alone felt priceless. Their love never chased attention. No hand-holding for paparazzi, no thirst-trap couple selfies, no need to prove anything to the outside world. He asked for privacy, but not to hide her, to protect her. He told her once, while holding her hand in the warm, low light of his home studio, This is the one part of my life the world doesn't get to touch. She understood, and more than that, she honored it. For years, they lived in peace under the radar. A few close friends knew, a handful of family. But to the public, nothing. They were ghosts on purpose. To the world, it was like she didn't even exist. Interviewers would dance around the topic, asking Malcolm about love, marriage, fatherhood, hoping for a soundbite. But he'd just flash that smooth smile, say something vague, then slide the conversation somewhere else. Afterward, he'd turn to her and say, "Some things ain't meant to be on display." That was his line. Like love could lose its magic once you put it under a microscope, so they never did. Their relationship stayed wrapped in silence, part shadow, part sacred. Nobody knew, nobody needed to. On the outside, Malcolm Jamal Warner was the definition of polished, calm, confident, a man who survived childhood fame and turned out wise, sharp, and solid. But behind closed doors, she saw a different man, one far more real, far more raw, and sometimes far more broken. At home, he was gentle, quiet, his mind always somewhere else. You could feel the weight on him even when he didn't speak. The industry had taken pieces of him, chewed him up, and left scars no one ever saw. He didn't open up often, but when he did, it always came late at night. That's when bits of the pain started to leak out. He'd talk about the betrayal, the pressure, the feeling of being trapped in a character that didn't match who he really was. People wanted Theo. They didn't want him, not the man behind the smile. "There were times I wanted to disappear," he whispered once, laying beside her in the dark, staring at the ceiling like it might finally give him some peace. She didn't press, didn't pry, she just listened. His home was his escape, a place filled with incense smoke, smooth jazz humming low, scattered stacks of black literature, handwritten poems, and the soft hum of his guitars. That was his real world, and she was the only one allowed in it. No trophies, no plaques, no framed magazine covers on the wall. Malcolm's home didn't scream celebrity, it whispered soul. It was all vibes, art in motion, poetry living in the corners. He was always writing, always. Notes scribbled on napkins, torn pages, backs of receipts, whatever he could find. Notebooks piled up like little time capsules. And the wildest part, some of his deepest, most powerful words, they never left the room, never published, never posted, just truths he kept tucked away. His biggest fear wasn't fading from the spotlight, it was being misunderstood. "I want my daughter to know who I really was," he once said. Not the version they put on magazine covers, the real me. Malcolm was spiritual to his core. After long days, he'd light sage and sit still, eyes closed, letting the smoke chase off whatever energy tried to follow him home. He believed in ancestors, in energy, in the idea that this life was just one part of a bigger picture. And that belief shaped everything, especially how he loved. He showed up fully, patient, present, gentle. Even when he was battling darkness on the inside, he never stopped giving light. On the tough days, he'd vanish into his studio, lock in with his music, headphones on, heart open. That was his therapy. That's where the pain came out, not in words, but in melody. But don't get it twisted, he wasn't all shadow. There was so much joy in him too. He'd dance like a fool in the kitchen, flipping pancakes with a speaker blasting old school soul. He'd cry during cheesy movies, send random midday poems, and still sing lullabies to their daughter, even when she was way too grown for lullabies. Because to her, he was never the famous guy. He was just dad. He was just him. No mask, no act. A complex mix of strength and softness. Confidence in one breath, quiet doubt in the next. A brilliant soul still figuring out how to live fully, even while carrying scars the world never saw. And she loved all of it. Every layer, every contradiction. He didn't have to be perfect. He just had to be real. Their daughter was born on a stormy February morning, rain tapping on the windows like a heartbeat from the sky. When he held her for the first time, It was like the whole world slowed down. He didn't speak, just held her close, like she was made of glass and stars. His hands were steady, but his lips were shaking, his eyes already full of tears. Later she joked it was the only time he'd ever been speechless, but truth is, he was overwhelmed. By the moment, by the weight of what it meant, the power to break old patterns, the chance to start fresh. "I didn't know love could feel like this," he whispered, barely audible. Right then and there, they made a vow. No media circus, no baby pics sold to glossy magazines, no cute talk show name drops, just them, just family, no noise, no distractions. And she never felt hidden, she felt safe. Malcolm had been burned before, scorched by the spotlight. Past relationships turned to ash by gossip and lies that spread like wildfire. This time, he was protecting what mattered. He wasn't playing the fame game anymore. He wanted his daughter to grow up with peace, not paparazzi chasing her down sidewalks, not strangers analyzing her baby photos, just peace. And he meant it. They raised her in silence, in love, in a world far from the flash. No paparazzi, no clickbait headlines, just real life. Their daughter went to school like any other kid. They hit up the neighborhood parks, flipped through pages at local bookstores, wandered farmers markets on lazy Sundays. And if someone recognized Malcolm, he'd smile, say a quiet thank you, then gently guide his daughter away, like clockwork. She didn't really understand who her dad was. Not at first. It wasn't until she learned how to use Google that the question started. "What's the Cosby Show?" she asked one afternoon, holding up an old DVD box set, giggling at the cover. Malcolm just chuckled. "Something I did a long time ago," he said, brushing it off like it was nothing. But she started noticing the way strangers looked at him, that mix of respect, surprise, and nostalgia, the way people kept calling him a name that wasn't even his, Theo. But none of that changed him. At home, he stayed grounded. He read to her every night without fail, taught her how to strum her first guitar chords, and made up goofy songs just to see her laugh. When he traveled, he didn't come back with gadgets or clothes. He brought books, always books. And when she got sick, he was there, every time, all night, no hesitation. Their house didn't look special from the outside, but inside, it was alive. Music floating from room to room, laughter echoing off the walls, late night talks, quiet prayers, a world built on presence, not performance. They weren't flashy, but they were solid, a true unit, a bond that no article, no interview, no rumor could explain. And then came the trip to Costa Rica, supposed to be nothing more than a reset, a quick pause from the chaos, just a moment to breathe. But it turned into something else entirely. He'd been carrying too much for too long, and it was finally starting to show. The headlines, the stress, the pressure to keep showing up, smiling, performing. Malcolm was doing it all. Poetry nights, directing projects, writing behind the scenes, and still making time to help his daughter rehearse for her first school play. From the outside, he looked steady, but she knew better. She saw it in the way his eyes lingered just a second too long, like they were always somewhere else, and how his shoulders had started to slump, like they were holding more than his frame could carry. So when he brought up the idea of a break, just a quick escape, she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said before he even finished the sentence. He needed rest. They needed quiet. They landed in Costa Rica 2 days before everything changed. The beach near their villa was practically empty. The ocean stretched wide and calm, like it was breathing with them. Malcolm felt different there, loose, lighter. He played jazz while they unpacked, danced barefoot in the sand with his daughter, flipped pancakes to the beat of an old soul track, and moved like a man rediscovering himself. "I needed this," he told her that first night. They sat out on the patio, wrapped in each other, the sunset painting the sky behind them. I forgot what peace felt like. But in his eyes, there was something else, a flicker, a shadow, like a sentence left unfinished. She couldn't explain it, but it hit her gut. Something wasn't being said, like he was holding back the final line of a poem, the part that tells the truth. Then came July 20th. They woke early. He made coffee, humming an old Coltrane tune under his breath. Their daughter was already in her swimsuit, twirling through the villa, laughing, glowing. Everything felt perfect, until it wasn't. He looked at her the same way he always did, like he still couldn't believe he helped create something that perfect. "Let's go down early," he said, "before the sun gets too high." It was just after 8 a.m. when they headed to Playa Cocos. The tide was beginning to creep in, but the water looked still. calm, almost gentle. A few scattered tourists lounged nearby. Some walked the shoreline barefoot. Others laid out towels under umbrellas. It felt safe, normal. The breeze carried a soft mix of salt and hibiscus, and she remembered it so clearly, how good he looked that morning, barefoot in the sand, skin kissed by the sun, peaceful in a way he hadn't been in months. He held their daughter's hand as they stepped into the shallow waves, water lapping around their ankles. Everything felt light, until it didn't. A scream, a strange tug in the water, a shift in the rhythm of the waves. Their daughter's giggle suddenly cracked into a sharp cry. Malcolm hadn't gone far, maybe just a few feet out. He was always cautious, always watching. But the ocean doesn't care how careful you are. There was no splash, no dramatic moment, just a violent pull. Later they said it was a riptide, strong, silent, nearly invisible. One of those forces that waits patiently, then strikes all at once. He was gone in seconds. She screamed his name. Their daughter stood frozen, eyes wide, lips trembling, not making a sound. Two nearby surfers dove in without hesitation. Tourists ran toward the shore trying to help, but she could only stand there, powerless, watching the ocean swallow the man she loved. He returned, but only as a body, limpio, silent, still, cold hands, cold sand. Strangers carried him out of the water and laid him flat on the beach. They jumped into action right away. CPR, chest compressions, calling his name, but his eyes never opened. His chest stayed still. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling, whispering his name over and over again. Like saying it enough could pull him back. Like her voice alone could anchor his soul, but nothing worked. A doctor vacationing nearby rushed over and took over. Then the Red Cross responders arrived. They tried everything. Nearly an hour passed. No pulse, no breath, just stillness. And in that moment, on that beach, with the waves still rolling in like nothing happened, she felt herself snap. Her body stayed there, but something inside her broke clean in half. That was the second everything changed. The second her world cracked open and never closed again. There's one detail she never told the police. Not to be shady, not to cover anything up. It just didn't make sense at the time. It felt like a hallucination, a trick of the mind. Part trauma, part shock, part disbelief. But now, sitting alone in the quiet corners of their home, she remembers it like a scene stuck on repeat. Right before he stepped into the water, right before it all unraveled, he paused. Not casually, not distracted. He turned and looked at her. It wasn't just a glance. It was a long, still stare, like he was saying something without words, like he knew something she didn't. His hand had slipped from hers slowly, not in a rush, not by accident. She remembers that exact moment with haunting clarity. He kissed her forehead gently, soft and slow, while their daughter ran ahead toward the waves. Then he pulled back and stared. There was something in his eyes, not fear, not panic, not confusion. Something else, something she still can't explain. It felt like he knew. She's replayed that moment more times than she can count. Him pausing, turning back, locking eyes with her like there was something he couldn't say out loud. And no matter how many times she goes over it, she still can't shake the feeling. Did he sense something shift? Was it instinct, the pull of the tide? Or was it something deeper, emotional, spiritual, cosmic even? Was that quiet moment on the beach a goodbye? He never said it, not with words, not directly. She told the authorities everything else, the time they left the villa, the way the wave hit, the CPR, the panic. But she left that one part out, that look, that pause. Because truthfully, she didn't even understand it then. Back in that moment, it was just pain, sharp, blinding, confusing. Only later did it start to feel like something more, like a message she wasn't ready to hear. And there's one more thing, a detail she's never shared, not with police, not with friends, not even in therapy. The night before it happened, he couldn't sleep. Sometime around 3 a.m., she woke up and found him outside under the moonlight, sitting barefoot in the patio chair, a journal resting in his lap. He looked peaceful, still. When she asked what he was doing, he didn't say much, just smiled, soft and tired, and said, "Writing down the stuff I haven't said yet." That journal vanished. It wasn't in his bag, not in the villa, not with his clothes, just gone. Maybe he left it behind on the sand. Maybe the ocean swallowed it whole. Or maybe, just maybe, he meant for it to disappear. She hasn't stopped thinking about it. Because deep down, in a part of her heart she tries to silence, there's one question that never goes away. Did he know? That morning on the beach, with the sunlight, the laughter, the calm, did he know he wasn't coming back? He didn't say much. No grand goodbye, no dramatic moment. Just a quiet line, smooth, soulful, like only he could say it. They were standing on the shore, watching their daughter laugh as she chased the waves. He reached for her hand, gave it one soft squeeze, and said, "If anything ever happens to me, tell her who I really was." She chuckled, brushing it off. "Don't say that," she told him, half smiling. "Nothing's happening to you." He nodded slowly, but never took his eyes off the water. "I know," he said, "just if it ever does, don't let them turn me into something I wasn't. Not for legacy, not for image, just tell the truth." At the time, she figured he meant it metaphorically, like maybe he was talking about how the world misunderstood his career, or the way fame had boxed him into roles he didn't ask for. For years, he wrestled with that, being trapped in other people's nostalgia or used as a symbol instead of seen as a man. Very few got to see the whole version of Malcolm, the raw, complicated, brilliant version. But now, that sentence plays on a loop in her head. "If anything ever happens to me, tell her who I really was." He never said goodbye. Never even said "I love you" that morning. He didn't have to. She already knew. Because what he gave her instead was a mission. A quiet request wrapped in love and trust. A final truth whispered in advance. At the time, she hadn't fully grasped it. It just felt like a strange comment, a passing thought. But standing over his lifeless body in the sand, clutching their daughter while the responders packed up their gear, it hit her all at once. He wasn't just asking. He was counting on her to speak for him. This is for the version of Malcolm Jamal Warner the world never got to meet, the one hidden beneath the headlines, the one who never showed up on red carpets or talked about his feelings on late-night TV. There were layers of him even longtime friends never saw, but she did. She saw it in the stillness, in the quiet pauses at dinner, in the way his eyes would drift off mid-song while strumming a guitar. His fingers kept moving, but his mind was somewhere far away, like it was chasing a thought he could never quite catch. There were nights when he'd lie beside her, eyes locked on the ceiling, not saying a word, not crying, not breaking down, just holding something in, something too heavy for words. It wasn't depression in the way most people think. He still laughed, still showed up, still loved them with everything he had. But there was a quiet ache in him, something unfinished, something that never fully healed, a low hum of pain that followed him no matter how bright the room was. It wasn't for attention, it wasn't drama, it was just real. And now she understands he needed someone to carry that truth for him. Not a fairy tale, not a legacy polished up for public approval, just the truth. He used to say he felt like two different people. There was Malcolm, the face everyone remembered, Theo, the golden boy, the smile that made the world feel safe, and then there was the man he had become, more layered, more scarred, more awake to how fragile life really is. "There's a version of me people expect," he told her once, "and then there's who I really am. And honestly, I'm not sure they'd love the real me as much." That's the version she's telling you about now, the one who never fit into a soundbite, but left a mark far deeper than fame ever could. He carried the weight for decades of being seen, but never really known, of being celebrated on the surface, but overlooked where it mattered. He got praise, sure, applause, nostalgia, but respect, the kind that digs into your soul and sees your full worth, that didn't always follow. He fought for roles with depth, characters that let him stretch, grow, breathe. He wanted to break out of the 80s sitcom box, but that box had a tight lock. A few good roles came his way, but so many didn't. Still, underneath all that career frustration, there was something quieter, something heavier. He never made a public statement, never posted about it. But in the year before he passed, something shifted. He'd started having chest tightness, on and off. Little moments where his breath would catch or his heart would pound too hard, too fast. He blamed stress, said it was just part of getting older, told her not to worry. She did. She begged him to see a doctor again and again. But every time he promised he would and changed the subject. No tests, no checkups, no drama, no headlines, whether it was pride, fear, or just not wanting to seem fragile. Even around the people who loved him most, he stayed silent. He smiled through the discomfort, told her he was fine, kept going, kept giving. After the accident, she asked Costa Rican officials about the autopsy, cause of death, asphyxiation by submersion, drowning, but there was more. A quiet footnote in the report. Irregular heart rhythm, not conclusive, not enough to declare a heart attack, but enough to make her pause, enough to make her wonder if the ocean wasn't the only thing that pulled him under. Maybe something inside had already started to break down, and he just never said a word. She couldn't stop asking herself, did something happen before the wave? Did his body fail him before the water even touched his skin? She'll never know for sure. The timeline is blurry. The truth may be lost forever. But one thing she does know, something she always knew, is that Malcolm was carrying way more than he ever let on. Not just secrets, but soft ones, heavy ones, quiet truths that lived in his chest and never made it into conversation. Now she's the only one left who can speak for them, the only one who can tell the full truth. After his body was flown back home, the world didn't pause. It went into overdrive. Non-stop calls, reporters circling, producers begging for sound bites, old co-stars reaching out for tribute quotes, friends showing up with flowers and long stories, trying to make sense of it all. It became a whirlwind of noise, loud, endless, and distant. For 10 straight days, she didn't hear any of it. She never left their bedroom, just curled beneath the blankets, wearing one of his old sweatshirts, clutching it like armor, desperate to hold on to his scent before it disappeared completely. Their daughter had already been taken to stay with family, far from the flashing cameras, far from the media crowd building outside their gate, ready to turn a man's death into trending content. She didn't cry, not at first. She didn't speak. Grief didn't come screaming. It came like a boulder on her chest, quiet, crushing, immovable. She just laid there for hours, scrolling through old videos, watching him laugh in interviews, watching him recite poetry, rock their daughter to sleep, cook pancakes in the kitchen. She kept watching, even though none of it felt real anymore, like she was staring at a ghost, one she didn't realize was already slipping away until he was gone. And still, they expected her to speak, to step into the spotlight and deliver closure like it was a performance. Like she was supposed to sit down on a talk show, face beat, voice steady, offering up polished statements and headline-worthy quotes, as if grief could be packaged, as if pain followed a script. But she wasn't ready, not even close. And truth be told, she didn't owe the world a single thing. Malcolm would have hated the spectacle. He spent his whole life dodging the circus, carving out peace wherever he could. He didn't live to be consumed, he lived to protect. That's why, when it all hit, she didn't lean in. She vanished. No interviews, no specials, no neatly packaged tribute, no Instagram posts with poetic captions. She powered down her phone, closed the gate, shut the world out completely, and let herself disappear into silence. Because what she was mourning wasn't the version of Malcolm that fans adored. It was her Malcolm, the one who left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror with little love messages scribbled in Sharpie, the one who did wild cartoon voices for bedtime stories just to make their daughter giggle so hard she couldn't breathe, the one who treated making scrambled eggs like it was sacred, like it meant something. The world cried for a legend, but she was grieving her entire life, and then it happened. The moment that hit her like a whisper from the past. Late one night, around 3 a.m., the house was silent. Her daughter had finally drifted off, curled into a ball in the middle of the bed they used to share as a family. The quiet was thick, too familiar. Her grief wasn't sharp anymore. It had turned cold, heavy, dull, like a scar that stopped bleeding but never stopped aching. She hadn't even realized she'd gotten used to it. She hadn't meant to open it. She was just reaching for a charger in the nightstand, fingers fumbling in the dark, when they brushed against the edge of a wooden box. His box, Malcolm's so-called vault, the one he always joked about, said it held his deepest thoughts. She never touched it, not once, not even out of curiosity. But that night, something in her shifted. She lifted the lid. Inside, chaos. But his kind of chaos, folded notes, torn paper, scribbled half sentences, fragments of poems, lyrics scratched out and rewritten, journal pages ripped from their spines. Some entries were wild, messy, emotional. Others felt like whispers, things he had to write down before they disappeared from his head. And right in the center of it all was a letter, a simple envelope, no date, no stamp, just 3 words scrawled across the front of, "For you." Her breath caught, hands shaking, she peeled it open. The ink was smudged in places, like it had been written fast, maybe even through tears. And as she read it, the words knocked the air right out of her chest. "I don't know when you'll read this, maybe soon, maybe never. Maybe something happens and I'm gone. But I needed to say this somewhere, just in case I never get the chance. You are the only truth I've ever known. You gave me peace when I was tired of pretending. You gave me a family when I had forgotten how to belong. You gave me space to be imperfect and still be enough. If I go before you, the letter stopped there. But the silence said the rest. Don't protect me with silence. Tell the world who I really was, even the parts that weren't pretty, even the parts I tried to hide. If they remember me at all, let it be real. That's the line that finally broke her. She cried harder than she had since the day it happened. Not soft tears, not quiet mourning. A raw, breathless sob that tore through her chest like it had been waiting, demanding to be let out. And in that moment, she knew it was time. Not because the press wanted their scoop, not because the world needed a story, but because he asked. Because silence wasn't sacred anymore. It had become a cage. So when she finally sat down to speak, it wasn't for ratings. No TV crew, no glam, no filters. Just a plain voice recorder on the kitchen table, blinking red, waiting, like it knew how long this truth had been trapped inside her. She didn't write a script, she didn't rehearse, she just pressed record and started talking. Her voice cracked immediately. People think they knew him, she began. And maybe, in some ways, they did. He was kind, brilliant, thoughtful. All of that is true. But he was also scared. He was exhausted. He carried a weight this world never gave him a place to set down. She paused, sometimes for a few seconds, other times for long, aching stretches. But when the words came, they poured out, unfiltered, unpolished, and finally, free. She spoke about his fears, the ones he never admitted to anyone. Fears of getting older, of being misunderstood, of being remembered for the wrong things, or worse, not being remembered at all. And for the first time since he left, she wasn't grieving in silence. She was honoring him with the one thing he never got enough of, truth. She revealed something no one knew, that Malcolm had written goodbye letters before, not because he was planning to leave, but because he believed people deserved their flowers while they were still alive to smell them. It wasn't about fear, it was about love, raw, intentional love. And that's when she began sharing the parts of him nobody else ever saw. The self-doubt, the vulnerability, the roles he turned down, not because he couldn't get them, but because they felt fake, forced, hollow. He didn't want fame if it came at the cost of authenticity. She told the story of the night he broke down in tears after their daughter's school play. And it wasn't just pride that made him cry, it was fear. Fear that he wouldn't be around long enough to watch her grow, to protect her, to cheer her on. She spoke about the health scares he kept hidden, the tightness in his chest, the shortness of breath that showed up more often, how he shrugged it off, how he avoided doctors even as it got worse, and how, one night, he looked her dead in the eye and said, "I don't want to find out something I can't fix." Then she talked about that final morning, the way he looked at her, the stillness in his body before the waves even touched him. Something in that moment didn't feel right. "I don't know if it was just the ocean," she said. "Maybe it was the current. Maybe it was his heart. Or maybe it was just time, but whatever it was, it took the best part of me with it." And then she said what she'd been holding in for weeks. "I don't want to stay silent anymore. Silence won't bring him back, but maybe the truth will finally let him rest." She stopped recording after that, not because she was done. There was still so much more to say, but her voice couldn't carry it any longer. Still, it was enough. The world had finally heard her. And with that, the truth began to rise. 1 week before his death, Malcolm Jamal Warner had written another letter, one no one ever saw. It was buried deep in that wooden box, untouched until that sleepless night. In it, he poured out everything, his fears, his dreams, his regrets, his deep love for their daughter, and his hope. Not to be worshipped, not to be sanitized, but to be remembered exactly as he was. The way he turned bedtime stories into full-blown adventures. The way he made the smallest moments feel like memories you'd never forget. She sees him every day now, in their daughter's spark, in her wild curiosity, her laugh, her kindness. He lives on in all the little things. Because Malcolm Jamal Warner's legacy isn't just in awards, magazine covers, or sitcom reruns. It's in the people he loved, in the truths he held back, in the honesty he never got to say out loud, until now. Her final message is simple, raw, and real. He was a man who asked for privacy, but gave everything of himself in return. He was a light, not loud, not flashy, but steady, focused, purposeful. His love didn't need attention to be real, but it deserved every bit of it. And today, she breaks the silence, not just for Malcolm, but for anyone who's ever felt invisible, anyone who's ever been forced to hide pieces of themselves just to survive. This story is for the ones carrying weight no one can see, for the quiet warriors, the misunderstood, the ones living between who the world says they should be and who they really are. If this story hit something real inside you, don't just scroll past. Tap like, let the algorithm know truth still matters. Subscribe, because there are more untold stories that deserve to be heard. Drop a comment, tell us what Malcolm's story meant to you, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that behind every public figure, there's a person, a real one, just like Malcolm. And hey, hit that notification bell so you never miss the next deep, powerful, no-filter story we drop. Yep, thanks for watching, and thank you for helping us honor the real Malcolm Jamal Warner. We'll see you in the next video.